20th, 2023, and we've got a very somber edition of the Sports Note, literally just an hour before we go live with the Wise Guy show. And by the time this gets posted, it'll probably coincide right with the Wise Guy show, if not go up just slightly after. And that was the news that came out yesterday afternoon about this time, that legendary NFL running back, Cleveland Browns Hall of Famer, and probably the greatest to ever play in the National Football League, Mr. Jim Brown, had passed away at the age of 79. Jim Brown played from 1957 to 1965. He was a 9-year vet. He was an 8-time NFL rushing champion. His 12,312 yards were an NFL record until Walter Payton broke that record back in 1984. Brown also rushed for 1,863 yards in his final season of 1965. I'm sorry, it was 1863. Want to be accurate with that. That actually ranks 13th on the league's all-time list, which was broken in 1973 when O.J. Simpson became the first in history to eclipse 2,000 yards when he hit 2003. Brown's 12,312 is still 11th on the all-time list, and really was not even sniffed for a number of years. And also put this into perspective, as bad as the Cleveland Browns franchise has been statistically since they last won the NFL championship back in 1965, the second closest on the Cleveland Browns all-time rushing list is Hall of Famer Marion Motley with 7,274, but he's likely going to get eclipsed by current Browns all-world player Nick Chubb. Chubb sits at 6,341, so that's putting him just under 900 yards away, and Chubb should probably have that broken, barring injury, knock on wood, by the middle point of this season, regardless, unless Deshaun Watson starts taking all those carries away, and the Browns end up going in the tank or end up falling down behind to where they have to start throwing the ball and don't put it on the ground. But with the Browns schedule, some of their early season matchups could lean for Chubb finally passing Motley. Now, could it be something where Chubb runs down Jim Brown? It would have to be something that he would have another probably 4 to 5 great years to even sniff that point. He's still he's still 3,659 yards away from getting to 10,000, and then he's got to have 2 more really good years on top of that. So that's realistically another 4 to 5 years. Now, when Brown set the mark of 1863 back in 1965, he did it with a pace of 6.4 yards per carry and only 291 attempts. And since then, only 3 players have eclipsed the 6.0 mark in a season. And there was a 6.0 and then a couple of 6.1s. But for a 6.4 average, that's a record that probably will never be challenged. Now, we do know that Jim Brown had his share of controversy off the field as well, not only for his temper, but also the way that he clashed with Brown's management towards the end. Brown was actually arrested 7 times for assault, several of which against women. Again, well documented that he dropped a woman off a second-floor balcony back in 1968. Charges were later dropped when the woman would not cooperate with prosecutors. Brown was also, ironically enough, fined $300 for assaulting an officer during that time. Brown also made terroristic threats against his second wife, Monique, back in 1999, and served 3 months in prison in 2000 when he refused to comply with the court-ordered counseling and community service, and paid the I want to say it was like an $1,800 fine or something of that nature that was negotiated by the courts. But as great as Brown was off the field, and he'll mostly be remembered for that, but a very close second is going to be everything that he did within the civil rights community. Brown was very outspoken as a man of color as early back as 1950, when he was an up and coming star. Out coming going into high school, going to Syracuse University, and we'll get back to Syracuse here in a couple of moments. But Brown was actually part of the Cleveland Summit, which was himself at the time Cleveland Mayor Carl Stokes. It was Bill Russell, and it was also Kareem Abdul-Jabbar lending their support along with 8 other prominent Clevelanders and also African American gentlemen, very prominent in the world of politics, entertainment, things of that nature, endorsing their support in Cleveland for Muhammad Ali after Ali refused to serve in the military during the draft, and and Brown continued that by establishing a number of foundations, but most notably the I Can Foundation in 1998, and that foundation works with gang members to help deter them away from serving time in prison by actually teaching them life skills to better themselves for the real world, and lend their talents to the masses, to the mainstream, etc. It's kept thousands of gang members throughout the country out of prison and reformed quite a few of their lives. And also it was also something that a lot of people talk that contributed to the gang rivalry treaties back in 1992, just before the Rodney King riots out in Los Angeles, between the Bloods, the Crips, a lot of the gangs out in Southern California. Brown again very outspoken with that, and was also very prominent within the Browns organization for a lot of years, especially under the new ownership group of Jimmy and Dee Haslam. Now, say what you will about Jimmy and Dee Haslam for their bringing on guys with character issues, see Deshaun Watson, but after the previous ownership group, Randy Lerner, and Brown was absent from the Browns organization altogether while the team was owned originally by Art Modell after they moved. And then when they came back, that's when Brown started to come ingratiated back into the fold, so to speak, albeit for a short time where he had a falling out with Randy Lerner, and Randy Lerner had wanted really nothing to do with the organization, and then thankfully Jimmy and Dee Haslam came in, bought the franchise, got it away, and now essentially the franchise is really not improved, although they've actually had 2 winning seasons under Jimmy and Dee Haslam, and even have a playoff appearance, something that the entire Lerner family only had one in all those years prior. But it was something that Brown came back into the fold, got a statue in 2016, which was again the summer of Cleveland. He there's a lot of talk now that in the wake of his passing, you see the tributes that are all starting to roll in, from Emmitt Smith to the NFL releasing a statement, the Browns releasing a statement, Jimmy and Dee Haslam releasing a statement, the Cavaliers releasing a statement. LeBron James put out a very heartfelt statement as he had come to know, respect, and befriend Jim Brown a lot during his career, especially as he became to prominence when he came back to the Cavaliers in 2015, got them the championship in 2016, and then also went out to Los Angeles where Jim Brown lived the last few years of his life. So he got to know Jim Brown very well, and there's a lot of talk that the Browns could end up putting a 32 either patch on the jersey or something on the helmet, much like the Celtics did this year with Bill Russell, by all the teams in the league having a 6 on a black circle patch over the left breast of their jersey, but also the Celtics actually have a 6 kind of silhouetted within the key, the green painted key at the TD Bank North Garden, which is certainly prominent now during the NBA playoffs, after Bill Russell passed away back on July 22nd of last year, as one of the probably five greatest players ever to play in the NBA, and there's an argument with his 11 rings. A lot of people think he is the greatest. I mean, Michael's great, LeBron's great, but you can't argue with 11, regardless of how many teams there were. And especially as great as Russell was and as dominant as he was in his era. But there's also a lot of talk of already scuttlebutt coming out that the Browns could end up at some point this season and certainly before the start of the 2023 regular season, naming the field Jim Brown Field at Cleveland Browns Stadium, as the Browns severed ties with First Energy Corporation for naming rights on the stadium. So it went from First Energy Stadium back to Cleveland Browns Stadium, as there was a bribery scandal involving First Energy that the Browns were looking for an out clause to get out of that. So they still, without naming rights on there, but definitely putting something like that on the field would be an extremely, extremely well thought of gesture to match the statue out front. The fact that he was a member of the team's Hall of Fame class in 2010. He was elected to the NFL. He's a member actually of four Hall of Fames: the Browns Hall of Fame, the Pro Football Hall of Fame, the College Football Hall of Fame, and also the National Lacrosse Hall of Fame. People forget that when Brown was at Syracuse, he actually starred in four sports. He was involved in track, basketball, football, and lacrosse. And the NFL, after last season, named the rushing award for most yards from scrimmage during the regular season the Jim Brown Award, and that was actually announced by Barry Sanders and Emmitt Smith on the stage at the NFL Awards. I want to say it was in March. Might have actually been in February, just after the Super Bowl or something like that. But the Premier Lacrosse League, which is now the newest a major a pro sporting league out there. It's certainly not big enough to get into the Big Five. I'm sorry, the Big Four right now. It has not overtaken the MLS because the MLS actually continues to grow, much to my dismay. But the Premier Lacrosse League, which is the United States and I believe North America's premier outdoor lacrosse league during the spring and summer. Actually, their MVP award is the Jim Brown Award. So it shows you just how great of an athlete he was across the board, and just how much he did for a lot of people. And there's going to be a lot of people to kind of looking to detract for him, saying he only did things for minorities, but he did a lot to be able to help them advance for equality and get a lot of things in his post career. And he did a lot to be able to help the city of Cleveland over the years with his image, showing up to games, being an ambassador, basically keeping eyes on the franchise that was very downtrodden and quite honestly abominable for a lot of years up until their resurgence a few years ago, and now they're on the downslope again. Mike and I will be talking about this at length tonight during the Wise Guys show. But for arguably Jim Brown, the greatest of all time, Tom Brady was great. Tom Brady did go to 10 Super Bowls, but it was in a pass-heavy league. Tom Brady was, he played in an era that also had Drew Brees and Peyton Manning. He played with a lot of great talent, but Tom Brady had a lot of controversy on the field, whereas to Jim Brown, the majority of his controversy was off the field. Remember, he retired back in 1965 after a falling out with then Browns Judas owner Art Modell after filming The Dirty Dozen, and it was going to end up making Brown a couple of weeks late to Cleveland Browns training camp that year, and Brown opted to retire rather than actually be suspended by Modell, and Jim Brown ended up appearing in more than 40 films. He appeared in a number of TV shows, and ironically enough, a trivia question that I'm going to bring up to Mike tonight and our special guest. that I'll see if they can answer this. When Jim Brown appeared in a cameo role at the very end of the 2014 movie Draft Day with Kevin Costner, it was the first time he ever appeared in a motion picture as himself. He always was a character player, but this was the first time he ever appeared in it as himself. He did one more film, which was kind of a documentary in 2019, and then it did not actually partake in any future acting roles. So, is Jim Brown the greatest of all time? What will you most remember Jim Brown for, regardless of whether you saw him play or not? Could we ever see somebody be as great as Jim Brown again? Is it Brown? Is it Brady? Is it somebody else on your list? Let me know, and I will see you guys a little later on tonight, or probably will have seen you a little bit earlier with the Wise Guy Sports Show. We are going to be joined by a very, very special guest tonight. And I don't actually want to give too much away. But his name is Patrick McGuire. He is the lead writer for the Cleveland Sports Report. This was a very big get of Mike, and we hope to see you guys live at 9 tonight. If you did not catch us live, there will always be the replay, and I'm going to be a very busy cat because I got 2 other blogs probably coming out tomorrow and Monday, if not potentially both tomorrow. So I will see you guys very, very soon. Take care.